We're learning, guys. Our very first intro music. Welcome to Deep Recruiting. Today, we've got a really interesting topic. Our guest again is Bryan Flanagan, Master Sales Trainer. But our topic today is going to be all about how we, as sales professionals, actually end up encouraging our clients to lie to us. Kind of an interesting concept. It's something I think going on, right? When I told you about this topic, what was kind of the first thought that ran through your mind? Put you on the spot.
First thought that goes through my mind, do they do it on their own, or do we create it, and or do we allow it?
I think it's all three. I really do.
Exactly. It could be all three. If we tolerate it, they'll do it. But if we dig our heels in and ask questions about certain things and hold them accountable, perhaps it doesn't happen as often or as seriously.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. One of the things that as I was kind of thinking about this last week, a lot of it came back to why do clients do it? Why are clients deliberately lying to us? Not what are we doing? I want to get to that, but what do we think is actually their motivation to do it? And I can only come up with one real or really two key answers. And the first one is they don't want to upset us. They feel bad for us. But the other one, I think, quite honestly, is just confrontation avoidance. What do you think of that?
I believe those are part of it. I think the other side is that there's a trust factor involved.
Okay.
Again, there's
so they don't trust us in addition to not wanting to upset us and trying to avoid confrontation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And my definition of trust is meeting expectations over a period of time. If we don't have that much background, we don't have that much time spent with this particular prospect, they can't measure how trustworthy we are.
Absolutely.
If we don't approach them the right way, they're going to put their hands up and be a little defensive.
When you say approach them the right way, what do you mean by that? What is approaching a prospect the right way? What does that mean?
The analytical person doesn't want to know about your slow pitch softball team. The slow pitch softball team.
Salespeople out there.
Yeah. So with Jim, you cut to the chase. Yeah. Jim is the kind of guy that says, I don't care about your labor pains. Show me a baby. So you want to approach them differently. And that requires some research. Obviously, you can't do all the research necessary to pinpoint it each time, but you've got to have some indicators along the way that says, I need to speed this up or I need to slow this down. And you, as well as I, know that some prospects want the results before they want the relationship.
Yeah, and that would be me too. I think sometimes I have lied to a salesman before, and it was never about confrontation avoidance, and it wasn't about upsetting them. Frankly, it was just an effort to disqualify myself. I knew I wasn't interested, and I didn't want to go through the entire sales cycle. So I would lie about how qualified I was. I found that's an easy way to get rid of a sales professional, is just simply not tell them the truth about what's actually going on and what makes me a potential buyer.
But one of the ways to do that is to have some type of questioning to say, for example, this is one of my favorite comebacks. I'm not interested. Well, Mr. Prospect, I appreciate that. But if you were interested, in what area would it be? And the sales rep didn't back up on that. I mean, he kind of said it with tongue in cheek, obviously. But at the same time, the guy knew that he wasn't going to be put off that easily. The prospect knew the salesperson wasn't going to be shooed away with just one statement. And
how did you learn that, Bryan? What happened in your career that you learned how important that is and why it was important? What happened to you?
No shows. When you or I were working in the seminar business with the Ziegler Corporation, we had people, I'll be there on the 14th. Yeah, I'll be there 14th through the 17th. Man, I'm there. And there's a no-show. He goes, she does all the things we talk about doing now. Well, we should have asked the question, and I learned this from a guy named Weldon Hall. I learned, what would keep you from making the seminar? What would keep you from making this appointment? And the answer is, I'll be there. That may be you reading that to say there's something behind it. Or, well, I guess now he's stuttering. Now the prospect is stuttering. And you're saying he's not committed. He's not going to go.
Way, going really through the Wayback Machine, almost 30 years for myself. One of the very first deals I ever got, it was at a very big company here in Dallas. And it was a first job I got with that particular company. It was the first offer I got with that particular company for my candidate. And I distinctly remember this. This would have been this was May of 1995. And I spent 2 hours trying to close this guy to accept the offer. And he ended up accepting the offer to me on the phone. And I was hooping and hollering and I'm a great salesman. And we all know who didn't show up for work.
Yeah.
And, kind of feeding off what you said, the person was never going to do it. And I was trying to pressure the person into doing something they weren't going to do. And so he lied to me just to get me off the phone, just to get rid of it.
But somewhere along the line, you should have read that.
Yes.
Looking back in retrospect, of course, 2020 is always nice to have. But had you had an indicator or something that would trigger you to say, wait a minute, this guy's giving up too easily, or he's ready to get off the phone, he'll say yes to get me off the phone after 2 hours. Yeah. And you've got to ask some kind of qualifying question to manage your expectations and also to manage his expectations.
Well, I definitely learned a lot from that. When that person didn't show up for work, I didn't blame my client. And I'll tell you, I never blamed the candidate. I put the fault squarely right here because I knew it was undeniable. I'm very fortunate. That guy actually really doesn't know how much money I earned off of him.
That one mistake. Exactly. Amen.
Because I really went back and looked very, very hard at what it was that I was doing and what I needed to change in my process.
Right.
And I learned that there's only really 3 closes. I don't want to really get into them here. When a recruiter gets a job offer, there's really only 3 closes at work. And one of them is, so what do you want to do? And that literally is a close. Mm-hmm. And it is frankly one of the most effective closes. Yeah, Tony Robbins teaches that you don't close the sale at the end. You're closing that sale from the moment they pick up the phone or answer your text or your email. And I really, really believe that. I think that if you're going to be an effective closer, the sale's already done before you ever even get to the close. They've already purchased it. And your entire process has to be built around that. And that's what I learned from that incident.
Yeah.
To be really blunt.
The old ABC, always be closing.
Yeah.
That's an attitude.
Right.
But I've changed ABC or added. I don't know if I've enhanced it. My ABC is always be curious.
Oh.
If you get a client that's saying this, and before he said something else, he's saying B, he's saying A before, then you've got to ask that question, why did you change? In other words,
go ahead, you finish.
I'm talking to a guy the second time, and he says, well, this kind of training we want. And I said, I'm sorry, let me clarify. 2 weeks ago, you said you wanted this type of training. Now you're saying you want this type of training. Let me correct my notes. And let him say, well, no, I didn't mean that. Or yes, correct it, we've changed. But what happens is that too often we allow the customer to fudge on us or to lie to us by not standing our ground. Now, that's the same as why your prospect is lying to you. I'm going to not stand my ground, Jim, because I don't want you to dislike me. I don't want to blow the sale at this point. Well, wait a minute. You're not going to make a sale if you don't challenge it. You're going to elongate the sales process as well.
One of the points I noted, I've got a checklist here of the reasons I think what things we do to encourage a prospect or a client to lie to us. One of them is overly nice, trying to be too accommodating because you're afraid to upset them. I think is actually one of the causes.
when I work with salespeople, and I get a lot of this, you do too, on the nice side.
Yeah.
Here's a technique you can use. Oh, I would never use that technique. Why not? Well, because I wouldn't want you to use that technique on me. Wait a minute. You're not selling to you. You're selling to Jerry Jones or the Cowboys. You can't embarrass Jerry Jones.
That's
So
right.
here's what I've learned. I learned this from a client out of New Jersey. The intent behind your technique determines your ethics.
That's exactly right.
The intent behind your technique determines your ethics.
Absolutely.
If I know in my heart of heart that this product is a great fit, this candidate is what you need, then any technique I use is ethical or professional. But if I'm trying to force fit this candidate into a need, I've got to stop doing that before I completely ruin the relationship. But I need to ask more questions to make sure it's a good enough fit.
You know, in the recruiting business, one of the challenges, you bring up an excellent point, is are we trying to force a square peg into a round hole? This is actually really quite common in the staffing business because we sell such an imperfect product because we're selling human beings. And it's not unusual for a recruiter who doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't really have any other option to try to fit that square peg in a round hole, which is exactly what you're describing right there. Yeah. And that can lead to a client lying to us because we're trying too hard to sell something really honestly the client doesn't want. I was out home hunting over the weekend. I am looking for a new house. I was in one and, you know, the realtor could not read the stitches on the fastball. I just wasn't interested, but they just kept trying to sell me on what that home had to offer. And it didn't matter. I didn't care. And I think I'm the greatest prospect in the world because I'm going to tell you exactly what I think.
Right. You got a checkbook coming out of your front pocket here. So you're qualified.
I'm ready to go. Yeah. But she couldn't hear the message I was trying to communicate to her. So I ended up just saying, I didn't actually lie, but I did start making up reasons and excuses why I wasn't interested in that particular home. I'd already told her the main reasons I wasn't interested. She kept pressing. So I just made up some other things that I began looking for reasons that were insurmountable for her. You know what I mean?
Not every brush off is a lie.
Yeah.
But it is a misdirection. It's leave me alone.
Yeah.
If you had the courage enough and the skills enough to say, look, you've got a need. I've got a candidate. I think it's a good match. Where am I missing the mark here?
Yeah.
And be upfront. And another way of doing that is saying at the beginning of your relationship, Jim, if this doesn't match what you're looking for, please tell me as quickly as you can.
Yes, right there.
And I will tell you as quickly as we can that it's not a good match because we don't want to have a relationship that's elongated on nothing. So for us to establish a relationship, whether it be this placement or the next one, we need to be upfront with each other. Is that fair?
When I'm introducing myself to a candidate that I'm recruiting, I have a specific routine I go through. And one of them is I tell them that I have an expectation of honesty from them at all times.
There you go.
Part of that is if I get you an offer and you don't want it, I need, expect, require, demand. I insist that you reject that offer because all you're doing is rejecting a business proposal. That's all it is. And it's a little bit more involved than that, but I can literally see them relax.
Yeah.
When it's in person or it's on camera, I can see them relax into it because suddenly I'm taking that pressure of saying, no, I'm not interested in this job off of them. And I'm giving them permission to say no, which is ultimately what every prospect really wants. They want that permission to say no. If you give them that permission, you may not make that individual sale, but you end up improving your network. And this person should be the type of person that's going to go out and say, hey, you know what? You want to work with that guy, Bryan. You want to work with that guy, Jim, because you know what? They operate with integrity and it's okay to tell them no.
I totally agree. It's amazing when we start dropping brush offs or escapes or lies, that gives them permission to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've been on calls where I've called a 20-second injury timeout and said, wait, let's regroup here. I think I'm getting offline. Now, if you continue to go down that line, once again, you'll elongate the cycle. You make him frustrated. Let me get back on track. If I'm off track, Mr. Prospect, please bring me back. Mr. Candidate, please bring me back, and have a little check and balance. One of the things I ask all the time is, how are we doing so far? And just let them know that I care about you're going down the trip with me, not that I'm ahead of you or behind you.
You said, how are we doing so far, not how am I doing so far? Why is that distinction so important?
Because I use too many I's. The we has taken place of my I's in writing and communicating and voicemails, plus the fact that this is a partnership together. How are we doing? Because look, I need answers. You're not giving them to me.
Right.
I'm asking high impact questions. So your part of this is not going very well.
That's right. I heard it called, I don't know who said this, but I keep hearing it referred to as the we bubble. You want to create the we bubble where you're creating an environment where we are a team. It's not I and you, or even worse, I versus you. It is us together. I always want to position myself, and this gets back to encouraging them to be honest with you. I always try to position myself as a buying partner in the process, as opposed to the salesman trying to get them to do something.
Yeah. If in your business, what you're doing is just that. Look, I'm going to offer you somebody. I'm going to offer a solution to your problem, but I've got to take ownership of that problem with you to help you solve it. So if anytime I get off base, or if this is not, you don't feel this is the right candidate, you need to tell me as soon as possible. And if you tell me something that I think is not a fit or unreasonable, I'm going to tell you as soon as possible. Yeah. Let me go back to about 3 minutes ago, Jim. You said something about the process I use in interviewing somebody is to tell them they can say no.
Yes.
You have a process.
Yes.
Now, this is what I've learned. Process takes pressure off the person. It takes pressure off of you, the salesperson. It takes pressure off the prospect person, takes pressure off the candidate person. If you explain the process, here's what I'd like to do. Is that okay with you? And as you go through this, let the process absorb the pressure. That way you don't have to lie to me. I don't have to lie to you. I don't have that candidate right now, but I can find him. Would you extend me 24 hours to do that?
I've got a list here I want to wrap this thing up with, but before I wrap it up, I want to go back to Bryan Flanagan. I want you to tell our audience a little bit about you and how people can contact you to engage you.
I have a passion for what I do, but when I talk to people, I notice they don't have the same level of passion. So what I've learned to do is put my talent ahead of my passion, not ratchet my passion down, but be skilled and able enough to explain what I do and be passionate about it in a way that makes you want to receive it. So I do two things that people avoid. I train on public speaking and I train on selling. And I've been doing that. March of this year, Jim, was my 40th anniversary in this business full time. Been a great ride. So I do two things. I have a sales process that allows you to sell your value so you don't have to defend your price. And I've got a training process on presentation skills, which allows you to make a mistake and still be effective. My website is flanagantraining.com, www.flanagantraining.com. And my email is very simple, brian@flanagantraining.com.
And that's Brian with a Y. Sure.
Brian with a Y. Yes. Some people have there's one-eyed Brians and there's Y Brian.
One-eyed Brian.
Yeah. That way they can spell Mississippi with one eye. I want to hear your list. Get to your list now. You said you had some things.
I'm going to get to the list, but we're going to wrap with that. Before I get there, I want to send out a special shout out to Jamie Scott, who has created the intro music. I'm fumbling through and trying to figure out how to work on this thing. I think it'll be better the next time we do this. But thank you, Jamie Scott. We want your questions. We want to know what problems you're running into in the staffing, consulting, recruiting space. email us at deeprecruiting@teamgtn. We'd love to hear from you. And we can give attribution to the person who asked the question, or we don't have to. If you'd like to be a guest on Deep Recruiting, reach out, deeprecruiting@teamgtn. We'd love to hear from you as well. We want to make this as interactive as possible. We want to make this as consultative as possible. We want to help the staffing industry do better. And with that said, we're not going to have another episode until the first Monday of January. Topic is to be determined. But let's go through that big list we've got. This is just kind of what I came up with on why people lie. I think why people lie is they don't want to upset you. They want to do that confrontation avoidance. Bryan, you had one more item that you mentioned about why people lie to us. Do you remember what that was? I actually have forgotten already.
No, I thought I covered it. Trust, relationship. Those are the things. And sometimes, like you said, they purport to be decision makers when they aren't, and they're protecting themselves.
Ooh, I didn't think about that one. That's a good one. Their ego's getting in the way.
Yes.
That's actually a big one. I had not thought of that. That's good. So what are the things we're doing to create it? Let me run through this list real quick, and I may expand on a few of them that we didn't hit. Lack of rapport building. We talked about that. Using too much pressure. We talked about that. Forcing a square peg into a round hole. Talking too much instead of listening to your prospect. Coming across as desperate. Your prospect, your client can smell desperation in your voice, in the tone, and the words you choose. It's one of the worst things you can possibly do. Lack of frame control, allowing the prospect or client to manage everything when you as the sales professional should be in charge. Wishing the sale is actually working when in fact it's not. It's not the right sale that you should be making. Failing to get to the point. Begging for the sale. Henpecking them. You need to be persistent, but you should never, ever be a bother. Being overly nice. And the last one is overselling. It's kind of that we can do everything syndrome. Whatever the client says, why that's our specialty is your answer. That's a great way to create an environment, I think, where your client or your prospect is going to be motivated to lie to you. Anything else you want to add to this, Bryan?
One thing, Jimmy Cagney, the old actor, said, this is how you act. You walk in, you toe your mark, you look the guy in the eye, and you tell him the truth. And that's what selling is. You look the guy in the eye and you tell him the truth.
God forbid.
The truth is this is a good match. The truth is this candidate's right for you.
That's right. And the truth shall set you free every time. Hey, guys, this has been Deep Recruiting with Bryan Flanagan and Jim Bright. We very much appreciate your viewership. We'd love a like, a comment, a share. Tell us how we did. Give us feedback. We love it. Thank you very much. And we will see you in the beginning of January. Happy selling, everybody.
Go get them.